Heading to the 2020 NFL season, there was an unprecedented level of uncertainty around, well, just about everything. Fans everywhere were worried if the season would even happen, and if it did safely get underway, how would the actual gameplay be impacted? I mean, little to no fans in the stadiums, daily testing for the players and coaches, all sorts of travel restrictions. There were far more questions than answers to kick off the 2020 season. But apparently, everyone was worried about nothing because the most important answer about what the product on the field would look like has been answered. And the answer is one that most all NFL fans can appreciate, because so far there has been an absolutely insane amount of points. Check this crazy stat out. Through the first 4 weeks of the season, in 52 of the 63 games played, at least one of the teams has scored 30 or more points. Meanwhile, through the first 4 weeks of the season last year, it happened a mere 30 times. To take it a step further, this year, teams have scored 35 or more points 16 times this season, a 78% increase compared with games played during the first 4 weeks of last season. Not exactly a marginal bump. Anyway, well, I understand why there are plenty of fans who were concerned heading into the year, as 2020 marked the first time since the 2011 season that the off-season schedule was drastically altered. It looks like some of the side effects may in fact be rather fan-friendly. Granted, back in 2011, a far simpler time, the off-season chaos was caused by a labor dispute between the players and the owners. The result was a stressful lockout, yes, but one that was eventually resolved in a somewhat timely fashion. Because while the aforementioned lockout was obviously a big deal at the time, looking back, the dispute did not end up having all that much of an impact on the traditional NFL calendar. The fact of the matter is that the labor dispute was actually sorted out in time to actually play preseason games and whatnot. Something I am sure that most all of the NFL coaches would have paid top dollar for ahead of the 2020 season. But even if 2011's off-season uncertainty paled in comparison to this year's, it is hard to say that the lack of OTAs, access to team facilities to train during the offseason, and limited communication with their coaches did not impact the product on the field. There were more than a handful of sloppy performances early on, some surprising injuries, the whole shebang. And having seen how the beginning of that 2011 season played out, there were plenty of NFL fans who were a tad bit anxious as they awaited the start of this season. Everyone was curious to see what the corona-altered offseason was going to do to the game on the field. You know, provided we were actually able to get to that point, which we have. And at the time since, much has been made about all of the injuries that have stricken a number of star players around the league. But if you ask me, an even crazier phenomenon is the copious amount of points being scored on a weekly basis. Now, before anyone gets up in a huff talking about today's NFL, I get it. Obviously, the scoring in the NFL has been trending upwards over the past 2 decades, and I know it has become a passing league, and the games are now officiated in a way that certainly lends itself to the offense. But even in the context of the NFL scoring spike, 2020 has gotten off to an unprecedented start on the offensive side of the ball. Through the first 5 weeks of the season, the league averages 25.4 points per team game, totaling just under 51 points per game, which is truly a crazy number. For a reference point, last season, the NFL averages 22.8 points per team per game, totaling at 45.6 points per game. And if the scoring keeps up at this pace, it will be the highest mark since 1948, a season that took place nearly 2 decades before the first Super Bowl was played, at a time when the NFL had just 10 teams. Now keep in mind, the game was significantly different back then. I mean, come on. Have you ever seen the pictures of the old-timey NFL players? And having such a drastically lower total number of games allows for the average to be inflated more by a few shootouts. So for the sake of a proper comparison, let's look at some of the higher scoring seasons of the modern era. 2013 saw 23.4 points per team per game, and 2018 saw 23.3. But those two appear to be outliers, as the rest of the seasons during the 2010s have all fallen somewhere between 22 and 22.9 points per team per game. The point being that seeing this much scoring, even this early in the season, is rather surprising. I mean, the scoring has gotten to a point that even the most casual NFL fan who only tunes in now and again has likely noticed the increased scoring output by most of the teams in the NFL. And it looks like there are a few reasons for this phenomenon. Reasons that go beyond the anecdotal stuff, like offenses being quote-unquote ahead of the defenses following the disrupted offseason. One factor at play may be an overcorrection from a change that was made last season around how the league officials make offensive holding calls. Last year, the NFL told officials to make offensive holding calls a point of emphasis, resulting in an increase in flags, something that was a huge point of contention amongst fans, which I get. There is nothing more disheartening than watching an awesome play get called back because one of the referees threw a flag at a hold away from the play. It doesn't even have to happen to your favorite team, it is just frustrating to watch. According to ESPN stats and information, during the first week of the 2020 NFL season, officials threw only 18 flags for offensive holding across the league, a drop of 78% from Week 1 in 2019 and down 58.6% from the 5-year average from 2014 to 2018. And even though the decrease in holding calls was made a big to-do in the media after the first couple weeks of the season, it looks like this trend is here to stay. Thus far, through 5 weeks of the season, there has been a total of 159 offensive holdings called for 1,522 yards. For those keeping score at home, that is a 1.75 holdings calls per game for just under 17 yards per game. While that may seem like a lot at a glance, take a quick look back at the numbers from 2019. It is obvious that something has changed. In 2019, there was a total of 724 offensive holding calls for just under 7,000 yards, a total that was good for a clip of 2.83 penalties per game and 27.25 yards per game. Same for 2018, 2.77 penalties per game and 26.73 yards per game. That is a pretty drastic difference. But the increase in scoring can't just be due to the change in officiating. And a number of media personalities have tossed out their own theories as to why scoring is up. Chris Spielman, a former 4-time Pro Bowl linebacker and Fox Sports analyst, thinks it is the dual-threat quarterbacks that are the catalyst for the increase in offensive production nowadays. A mobile quarterback, if he sees man coverage on third down, instead of making a tough throw, he's going to get the same yardage by running the football because the defenders' backs are turned. Those quarterbacks are keeping drives alive with their legs. These athletes playing quarterback who are throwers and runners put so much stress on the defenses because they can limit what defenses you can use. While the quarterback play has certainly changed, it is not like there were no dual-threat QBs in the league the last few years, so I don't know how much credence I would give his take. Some folks think that it has to do with the way that coaches are calling games. It seems like more and more coaches are getting bold in short yardage situations on fourth down, and the massive decrease in punts surely has had an impact on the number of points. Not only does it give the offense more chances to score, but if the attempt fails, the opposing offense now has prime field position to try and go in and score a touchdown on their own. Coaches have also started to implement offensive systems and schemes that lead on an increased pace of play, which can obviously lead to more scoring. That, along with an increase in passing plays on early downs and the big shots down the field, have been a surefire recipe for more points, and a theory that I too can get behind. Finally, the last major theory floating around is that the absence of fans, or in some cases, the fan capacity limit, has drastically impacted the way the game is played on the field. Not only is the overall pressure of the game diminished, but offensive units have had a much better opportunity to communicate, and as a result, they are putting up numbers in bunches. Like everything in the NFL, there is no clear-cut single answer, but rather a multitude of factors that are driving up the scoring. But you know what? Is anyone really complaining? As far as I'm concerned, let's keep swallowing the whistle on tic-tac holding calls and let the excellent quarterback and offensive play shine the rest of the season. Why do you think scoring is up in the NFL this season? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you're new here and you haven't subscribed yet, now is a fantastic time to do that by going down there and hitting that subscribe button. And if you liked the video, then hit that like button and like the video. We'd really appreciate it. Last but not least, don't forget to tune in to TPS every single day for more cool videos. We'll see you next time.